Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Branley.
And I'm Alicia Coakley. Every member of the church has a story to share, one that can instill faith, invite growth, and inspire others.
On today's episode, we're going to hear how uncovering a 57-year-old secret led one man to find the true meaning of family. Welcome to Latter-day Lights. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Latter-day Lights. We're so glad that you're here with us today, and we're really excited to introduce our guest with you, Lindsay. Randy, how are you doing today?
I am doing well, thank you.
Great.
Perfect. So for those wondering how Randy came to be on the show, he actually had, one of his friends reached out to us and she was like, her name's Dalen, and she was like, you guys have to have Randy on the show. He has this incredible story and he wrote this book about it. And so I, looked him up and did a little research and I was like, oh my gosh, this would be amazing. So I don't want to spoil too much at all about the book or his story that he's going to be sharing with us. But I do want to ask you, Randy, you're kind of a pro now at doing podcasts and sharing your story through this type of platform. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. As a writer, when I first started writing about 10 years ago, when it was first published, I was really serious about, I want to succeed. I want to get out there. I want people to read my books and like them and enjoy them and be able to have an effect on the world. And I did realize that if I'm going to do that, I need to be able to go out, meet the public, get comfortable with talking to people. So I've done classes on writing. I've done classes on writing memoirs. Since I've done The Milkman's Son, that's been more popular, is to have me come and talk about writing memoirs and such. So, right. And interviews and being on lovely shows like this. Right. I
Awesome.
Get a lot of experience.
Very cool. So you'll have to, probably teach Scott and I, because we're only a year into it. We're pretty new. You have to give us some pointers. No, that would be great. So
you're doing fine already. So.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, we're excited. We're excited to get to know more about you and your story.
Yeah. What's interesting, I didn't realize this until we got on just a few minutes ago, but your book was actually won an award at the LDS PMA when we were there. And I remember hearing the name, but I didn't know it was you that wrote it. So that was pretty cool that it's kind of come full circle there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
tell us a little bit about your book and a little bit about yourself, Randy.
Oh, I want to talk about that award in just a minute. So.
Oh, okay.
I was talking with the two of you before we got started. Yeah, I had that. They announced that award. I had never been to the LDS PMA conference before. I was really surprised. I'm just out there. I'm enjoying my lunch, and there's my name, okay. And what? And so I go up there and I accept the award, and I was really grateful for it. And then I walked off the steep end of the platform and nearly face planted. So I'm like, yeah, that's great. That's really going to inspire a lot of confidence in everyone to we want Randy to come out and talk or write another book. Okay.
Well, we're glad you didn't face plant though.
Yeah, you and me both. I live out here in Phoenix. I'm in Mesa now, but most of my life I've been in Phoenix. And about 12 years ago, I decided I wanted to write. And it's that classic story. You pick up a book and you're reading it and you're like, I could write a better story than that. And so I started, and mine wasn't. It was really horrible. But I really enjoyed writing, and so I kept writing. And so that's kind of what I do now. I write. So that's my life. Wow. My wife and I had an agreement. We had adopted 2 children, and we kind of wanted one of us to be home so the kids could have more parent time. And so we're like, well, whichever one of us gets, we were both unemployed at the time, whichever one of us gets the better job, they'll work, the other parent will stay home. And she got the better job. So I stay home and I write, and I used to take care of the kids. They're all big now, so I don't do that anymore.
Right.
So that's kind of my situation.
Awesome.
My wife and I, we have.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how many kids you guys got?
9.
9.
Yeah. So we call it yours, mine, ours, and theirs, because we both have children from our first marriage. Then we have children together, and then we adopted the 2. So we are a very blended family.
Well, if you haven't written that book yet, that's a fabulous title. That might be your next project. Yours, mine, ours, and theirs.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's phenomenal. Awesome. Well, that is fantastic. So how long have you been writing for?
I probably started about, I don't know, I'd say like 18 years. And I mean, that's when I wrote that really horrible story that I was sure is going to be better than the one I read. And that started the process. So there was a lot of learning. So there was a lot of like, okay, I like this. I really want to continue to do this. So I picked up a ton of books, read a ton of books, attended community college for the creative writing courses, right? And then probably about 2012, I actually started writing. So I started on my first book, and I really loved the process, and I've been doing that since then. I was first published in 2013. So Cedar Fort published a series of, or I'm sorry, not a series, the first in the series. I'm just finishing up book 5 right now, but that book is about the events leading up to the end of the world from an LDS point of view. And so it's, speculative fiction.
What is that called? Because I'm going to want to read it now.
That's The Gathering.
The Gathering. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look it up.
Book 5, they're formatting it now, and I'll be putting it out. It'll be available on Amazon probably in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
Very cool.
I'm just writing my first book. Scott's written a couple books already, different genre than what his recent one is. But my first book has some leeway into that whole, apocalyptic second coming kind of stuff. And it's funny. It's like, it's harder, I think, writing about things that you don't know for sure, like how it's going to go down, and having to create it, because you have that whole like pull to like, I don't want to be wrong. Right? Like, I'm writing about something that I know is going to happen, it's going to be true, but I don't really know how it's going to all happen. So I am struggling with it.
That's like speculative fiction, right? I mean, you're just speculating on what it is. Now, for me, what's been kind of odd is, so I've got a lot of fans who have really enjoyed the series so far, and they're like, "That's spooky. You really nailed a lot of that stuff back then. That's already happened now." I mean, I talked about the Russians taking over the pipeline, and there's a lot of stuff. So at this point, I'm just kind of hoping that I am wrong. I'm kind of like in the opposite direction of you. Like, no, please. I don't want my book to come
You might
true.
have manifested it, Randy.
And if that happens, everyone's going to like, it's Randy's fault. He's the one who wrote about it.
We know
and
who
now
to blame.
it's his fault.
Every time something comes true, you're like, oh, crap.
Dang it.
And then I also get people, and they're like, oh, my God, Randy, your stories are really scary, because they're about normal people. I mean, so in this series, I don't talk about, superhero characters, and a lot of these books, right? You've just got someone, and they can do everything. No, these are just normal people, a regular family, right? With they do regular things, and God sometimes comes in and protects them with miracles and everything. But by putting that in a family, I mean, just regular people, then it gets scary, because then people are like, that could be me. And now, of course, that was the whole point for me to write that, and for people to be thinking that could be me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow. Interesting. I'm going to have to look into them. I'm going to go look it up.
So the book we're going to talk about today, that The Milkman's Son, what book was that in your journey?
It was I've had one since then. So book 4 in The Gathering came out, and then getting ready to do book 5. And so The Milkman's Son was the one prior to that. It was not one that I had planned to write. I have a friend, a writing friend, And she's like, you have to write that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, no one wants to read about me. And she's like, no, it's not about you. It's about this situation, which is that people take DNA tests, and then surprise, you find out that there's family you didn't know that you were, related to. And people are going to be looking for, I don't know, some answers, some thoughts, because they're in the same situation. I mean, how should they react?
Right.
And not that I try to tell anyone how to react. I mean, I just wrote about my experience just so they, people don't feel like they're alone on this journey. I mean, a lot of people, this happens a lot. In fact, when the book came out, I attended Roots Tech and I attend a lot of book signings and events, and I'd have people come up. I'm like, yeah, that happened to me too. Or that happened to, and they'll name a relative or a friend, right? I would say about 80% of the people I talk to, they had someone, either happened to them or they had someone they knew very well, and it happened to those people. So it's a very common event.
Well, with that, I think that's a really good segue into your story. Do you want to kind of tell us where did this all start? Well,
there's two ways that I could tell that. And the first is I could just start way back when I was little. And that's not the right way to do a memoir. So I'm going to practice what I preach. And I'm going to talk about an event that kind of changed, kind of set everything in motion. So I went out to visit my dad. It's a fairly long trip, so I don't go visit him very often because it takes a while to get out there. And, then I had smaller kids who, want to sit in a car for an hour. So we go out there and we're doing all of our normal visiting and everything. And then my dad, he goes, I've been having dreams. And immediately I'm like, what? I mean, I know everyone has dreams. But my dad is like John Wayne. Think of John Wayne in the cowboy movies, playing a Marine. My dad is a cowboy. He was a Marine. He even looks like John Wayne a bit, right? So he's like the real deal. So you can imagine that we don't have conversations about, son, I had a dream.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, what was in your dream? He said, I see the faces of people and they come up to me. And then I know that these are my ancestors, my dead ancestors. I'm like, okay. And so this is definitely not something that my dad talks about. And he's not, a person that is accustomed to having visions or visitations by spirits on the other side of the veil, right? So this was very strange for me. I'm like, okay, and what are they saying? He's like, they don't say anything. I just know that they want me to do the family history research. Like, oh, well, good luck with that. He's like, no, you're going to do it. I'm like, I'm not having dreams.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They didn't come to you.
They came to me. They came to you. He's like, no, I don't know computers, so you're going to do it. And that was it. That was all he said. So I started doing family history research, and I very quickly learned to love it. I mean, especially years ago, there was a lot more looking through a lot of documents, searching for that clue that might lead you to the next ancestor farther back in time. It's not like today. Today you get on Ancestry and they've got tons of suggestions, and it takes very little working and detective work. But back then, I felt like a treasure hunter going out on a great quest, right? And every time I found a name, I was like, yes, I scored another name. And so I did get into family history, and I'm the only one in the family that does family research. So there was a lot of work to do, and it all rested on me to do it. And so I went back, and so the Lindsays, I can go as far back as 1800 William, the immigrant Lindsay, and obviously that's not his real name. That's just what I call him because he's the one that comes over to the States and settles down in Ohio. I can't go farther back than that. I think he was born 1800 because that's what it says on the census rating, but who really knows? There's not a birth record. And the thing about Northern Ireland, if any of your people or any of the listeners are researchers, they know that if you're Protestant in Ireland, there's really no records because the Protestants and the Catholics, they don't get along. They don't get along today.
Yeah.
So they haven't got along for a really, really long time. And so it's pretty much impossible to find any records. And so it's kind of dead end there. And I moved on and I continued to research and the other family lines. And then I finally like, you know what, I'm going to take one of these DNA tests. And that will help me, because what will happen is then I'll find other matches, and I'll find other matches who have Lindsay's in their name, and I'll know that they're related to me, and that will help the research. So I'm like, that is a great idea. So I take the test and I send it in, and I wait and I wait and I wait. And finally I get the results back. And I get on there and I look at all the matches. And so I see match after match that I can tell it's from my mom's side. I mean, because I've done the history, so I know the family names and everything. And then I have all these people. I have no idea who they are. I'm like, I don't recognize any name anywhere. And I'm like, this has got to be wrong. And so I sent off a terse email to Ancestry saying, you guys messed up my test. You guys got to do something. You got to go find my right test, because this is right. And they're like, no, we don't make those mistakes. So I'm like, okay. And I'm checking and I think, I come up with this theory. My grandfather was a traveling salesman. I'm like, I think my dad has extra siblings. That's probably what it is. And so I went with that theory for a while until I got an email. So I got an email and from Tammy. And Tammy's like, well, what do you think about it? Like, I think it's probably my dad. And so it probably means that you're my cousin. And she's like, did you really pay attention to the score? Like, well, yeah, it said close relative. Yeah, it said close relative or sibling. And I'm like, oh, no, you're crazy. We are not siblings. And so for a long time, I called her the crazy lady. And I still call her the crazy lady, but for different reasons now. And so it was a shock. I mean, I thought about it, and I was like, oh, no, that can't be. I looked up the information. Sure enough, that is what it says, is it's half sibling, close relative or a half sibling, based on how many centimorgans of the DNA match, right? So that range, that number puts you in the half sibling or a close relative.
So Randy, was this Tammy lady? She was one of the people in your test that said you were related to?
It was a match, right? It was one of my matches. And it's my closest match because no one on my side, none of my family I know well has taken the test. So it is the closest match I have to anyone out there.
Got it.
And and so Tammy is my sister out in New Jersey. So she sent off a couple more emails, and finally she sent a picture of our dad when he was in high school. So when he was in high school, he was out here in Phoenix, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear that. And she told me where, and I'm like, yeah, that's where my mom was. That definitely during that time, my mom lived in that area. So
you basically just found out this John Wayne cowboy of a man that you've called dad for 57 years, right?
Yeah, he's
not your dad,
not my biological father. But what convinced me was she sent the senior picture from high school for my bio dad. And he looks like me. I mean, I look like him, right? I mean, it was so similar. And I call in my son, my oldest son, and he comes in. I'm like, look, and he starts laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at? It's like, that's your dad. Look at those lips. That has got to be your dad. I'm like, yeah, you're not funny. Go away. And so he laughed and left. And I called in my youngest daughter. I'm like, what do you think? And then she laughed. I'm like, don't tell me. Yeah, look at those lips, Dad. Dad, that's your dad. So, and I got rid of her as well. I'm like, go away. You're no longer my favorite child. And but right at that point, I was convinced. Obviously, that was my biological dad, and
Wow.
yeah, it was shocking. It took a while to
How
process.
was that? I was going to say, what were the emotions that you were feeling in that moment?
Well, confused, and frankly, a little concerned. I mean, prior to that, I had what I thought was a normal family. I had three siblings, and a normal set of parents. And then that news kind of changed that. So now I don't have any full siblings. All I have are half siblings, right? And okay, so I've got family out in New Jersey that I've never met. I didn't even dream that they existed.
Right.
Right? And then you start thinking like, is my family out there going to accept me, or maybe they don't want to have anything to do with me? And then there was like this really brief moment, like maybe they're rich, and like, hey, I don't care if they're rich, so that doesn't matter. So it's very troubling. I mean, it really upends your view of the world and your place in the world, because you're just not sure where you stand anymore, because you're not exactly the person that you thought you were, or at least that was my thinking then.
That version of you.
Yeah, that version of me. So, but then it stopped me thinking, and now I'm going to go back, way back, because now I think it feels more important. So I've always been the odd child, and I'm still the odd child. And so, if I come over and hang out with you, I'll probably be the odd friend, because I'm just an odd person. But there was definitely one of these things doesn't belong. Sesame Street, they did that whole thing, right? So you put me and my brother, my two sisters in that divided box, and your people are going to immediately go, oh, he does not belong. He is not part of this family. And my brother and sister mercilessly teased me about it. They called me the milkman's son, because I don't look anything like them. And really, I don't. Wow. Yeah, and I don't act like them. So my brother and sister are my brother and one of my sisters are nurses, right? And they'll talk about it at Christmas time, and they do that because they know all that talk about blood and guts hanging out and everything else makes me it upsets me. It kind of makes me a little bit queasy. So they can do that, and it's great. And me, I'm like, oh, those poor people. Someone falls down. If my mom were to fall down, they would laugh. Now I would be like, "Oh, Mom, are you okay?" Right? I would rush over, and my brother and sister, they would rush over to help too, while they were laughing. Right? Doesn't mean they don't love you, but they have a very different take on life than I do, and so I've never fit in. And way back, I'm like, could I be adopted? I mean, always at the back of my mind, I'm so different from everyone else. Am I adopted? And it turns out that I guess I am by my dad, the man who raised me. I've kind of been adopted by him. So that turned out to be true.
Wow. So I'm curious, because I know, for women, it's a little bit different, right? Like we get married and we change our last names. And so we don't carry that last name kind of lineage with us. But for you, all of a sudden finding out, you're not a Lindsay, right? So what is your last name? Like, what was it supposed to have been?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. So my bio dad is Bill Petrowski, and that was kind of difficult to learn how to pronounce right. So very different. But now here's the kicker. So when I went out and visited the first time, I found out that when he was roughly 57, he found out that his dad is not his biological father.
Oh,
no way.
Yeah.
So is he not actually a Petrowski then?
He's not really a Petrowski. He is a Lodge.
What?
So biologically, I'm a Lodge. Yeah.
A Lodge. Okay.
Which is
much,
yeah. Which is a lot easier to pronounce than Petrowski, and a lot easier to spell too.
Right, and at least then you get to keep your same initials, right? RL. So
absolutely right.
Oh my gosh. And he had no idea either. He
Right.
just
He didn't know I
figured this
existed.
out.
He was kind of hesitant on the situation. So when I got the picture, I was convinced, and I'm like, okay, Tammy, you're right. I guess I can call you sis now because we're related and everything. And she was really great through the whole process. But my bio dad, he was like, I don't have any children in Arizona, even though I lived in Arizona. I don't have any children out there. So he took a DNA test, and yeah, it came back, and I'm his son. So he's like, okay, I got a son. I got a son in Arizona that I didn't know I had. And he felt bad because all these years I've been out here, and he didn't know I existed. And for him, that was time lost. That was family activities, holidays, opportunities for memories that he never had because he didn't know I existed. So that was sad.
How did that conversation go with your mom? I mean, did you get to have that conversation with her?
Yeah. My mom to this day refuses to tell me anything. So, and her mind is sharp. It's not a case that mom's old and she doesn't remember. She is, for an old gal, she is really sharp. Her mind is all there. She knows. She's just not going to tell me.
Has that impacted your relationship at all?
It made me upset at first, right? I mean, Mom, this is my life we're talking about. And it upset me. My siblings upset me too, because they knew, right? That's why they were making fun of me. That's why they were calling me the milkman's son. And I'm like, if everyone knew, why didn't anyone tell me? And my sister's like, oh, because we knew you'd get upset, just like you are now. You're all upset. So that's why we didn't tell you.
Oh my gosh. And did your dad that you grew up with, did he know, or did he find out later, or how did that?
He found out later. And I'm not, I think my youngest sister told him. They figured it out. I mean, so you do the math, right? So mom and dad met. And when I say dad, I mean the man who raised me. So mom and dad met in April. And I was born at the very beginning of October. And I was a very fat, healthy baby. So, my brother and sister were like, yeah, he couldn't be a fat, healthy baby at that point in a pregnancy. So there's something wrong here. And so my dad had known for quite a while. Huh?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, so he hadn't really done the math. He
didn't care.
Wow.
I mean, so here's the great thing. So I'm really dreading how I'm going to tell Dad that I found this out. And so we have Thanksgiving, and everyone comes over to the house, and I get a moment where we're in the front room with the TV and the football game's going. I'm like, Dad, I got to talk to you. And I'm like, Dad, I found out that you're not my biological father. And he said, yeah, what a hoot. I'm like, no, it's not a hoot. It's a big thing. He's like, it's not a big thing. You've been my son all these years. You're still my son. I don't feel any different. You're my boy. It doesn't matter. Can you turn the TV up because the game's back on?
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I can see from his perspective. I mean, that makes sense because he loved
with
you
him having known
unconditionally.
Yeah.
Right.
He's my biggest
your perspective. It's different.
Right.
Yeah.
He is my biggest supporter as a writer. So my family basically are construction workers. I mean, he's a carpenter. My uncles are carpenters. I was a carpenter for a while. So for me to get into writing, he felt was an amazing thing because I was kind of going against the family tradition, right? And, my brothers and sisters, they're all like, let's go out and do sports and go out to the dunes. And I mean, they're very active and very sports minded. Me growing up, I mean, I like dinosaurs and aliens from space. And, I was always that weird kid. And like I said, it hasn't changed. I'm still that weird kid. but I taught myself how to write for the most part. I did attend some classes, but most of my learning came from reading, uh, forming critique groups where I got to work with other people and kind of build the skills and everything. And so for him, he's like, Randy had to do this by himself. He, no one else in the family helped him with that. That's just something he pursued. And so he's like super proud of me because I've done something that the other people in the family don't do. And I mean, he's just great. Yeah.
Oh man.
So what was it like meeting your biological dad? What was that like?
Oh, it was amazing. So one of the things about my biological dad, he suffered a stroke when he lived here in Phoenix, so that kind of has limited him. And then he had suffered a brain injury, he had head trauma during one of his jobs. So he has a difficult time speaking. So he doesn't say very much. And, he kind of moves slow because of that and everything. But it was an amazing experience. So my wife and I, we fly out and we visit him in New Jersey. And because that's where that family is from, is New Jersey. And they're all outside on the back porch when we pull up, and there he is. I go over and I give him a big hug, and I could feel the love coming from him, just flowing through his arms into my body. And it was just such an amazing thing. I mean, I'm going to get all weepy. It was an amazing thing. I could feel that love. I knew that he really loved me, which, is weird. I mean, he doesn't know me, but I was his son, and that was enough for him.
Wow.
So it was a great experience.
How has it been connecting with that side of the family? Like, have you been able to kind of get ingrained in some of their traditions and learn more about yourself that way?
I have. And that is one of the great revelations that have happened for me during this process. Is while I was the weird kid in the family I grew up with, I mean, still loved. They love me. That hasn't changed. These are people that I look like, and they are emotionally more like me. They don't laugh. If one of them were to fall down, they wouldn't laugh. They would be more like me. They would be like, "Oh, are you okay?" And they would be worried about it. They would be worried about people's feelings. So they are much more emotionally based, like I am, than the family I grew up with. So, I mean, that was one thing. And also, like I said, physically, yeah, I look like them. So I meet my sister, and okay, that's my sister. She looks like my sister. You put me in that picture, and I look like I belong in that family. So that was great. But it has given me a chance to kind of contemplate nature versus nurture. And there's a lot of things that I found out about my bio dad that were amazing. So when he was young, he used to draw pictures of dinosaurs and aliens just like I did. Aww. Right. And so I'm like, wow. And as I found more and more out about him, I discovered there's all these things that he does that I do. I mean, so this is someone I've never met, never had an idea even existed. And yet we have so many traits in common. Oh, cool. And so, yeah, it was amazing. And then obviously, my dad that I grew up with, I've learned a lot from him. There's a lot of traits I have from him that I've learned from him. My dad is a great storyteller, and that's really helped me with the writing. In fact, both dads have. So my bio dad, he would do some writing. So what he would do, not professionally, but he would read from the Bible, and he'd write little discourses based on some of the verses, right? So he had a passion for writing. He had an interest in writing. And then from the dad that I grew up from, I gained a really good storytelling ability. So my cowboy dad, he finished high school, so that's the only education he has. So it's not like he's an accomplished writer that I've learned from. He's just someone that knows how to tell a good story. And from a very young age, I was able to listen to him story after story after story, and I learned how to put together a good story based on him doing the same, him doing that and me listening to him. So my life has become this interesting blend of both fathers and their traits, putting me to a point where, yeah, I became an author. I have an interest in writing. I have a talent in storytelling that I've learned, from my dad growing up. So, for me, it was amazing to see how much both individuals influenced my life. One that I knew, one that I didn't know. So it's been very educational.
Very cool.
So I'm going to ask you kind of a deep question here, and I don't know if you have an answer to it. So if not, that's totally okay. I'm thinking about, the experience of having a father that you've grown up with that and then having another father that you didn't know, and then how that correlates with your relationship with your heavenly Father. Like you've talked about how you've realized that you have traits from a father that you didn't even know existed. Do you ever think about that relationship between you and your heavenly Father, and like how that maybe mirrors or even differs from the relationship you have with your other dads?
Well, I think everything in our life here mirrors in some way to heaven. And I'm not saying that there is like bloody war in heaven and, all the crime and everything. Yeah. But relationships and the important things, I think there's a mirroring. And that we're going to see a lot of. I think when the veil's removed, we're going to find so many similarities to what we experienced in heaven and what we experienced here. And maybe not that they are exactly the same kind of experience, but maybe they're the natural progression of what we were doing before. I don't know that I draw a comparison between my two dads now and to Heavenly Father. But I do know he had a hand in all of this. So my patriarchal blessing, and I don't normally talk about the patriarchal blessing, but it talks about that my parents had covenanted with me to be my parents. And I believe that is the dad who raised me. I mean, that's the dad that's being talked about. And I think of the mercy of a Heavenly Father. We could say that my mom made a mistake, and the Lord's hand came in, and I ended up with the parents I was meant to be with.
Yeah. Oh, so you talked about Jenny, this dream that your dad had growing up and or to do genealogy, right? And that led you down this path. I mean, that's all about family. How has that opened up your family and your journey? How has that impacted your life's journey and your family?
I'm a Lindsay. I haven't changed my name. I know we talked earlier about being a Petrowski or being a Lodge, but I haven't changed my name because that's the man who raised me, and I believe I belong in the Lindsays, and I believe the ancestors of the Lindsays would look down and they're like, Randy did all this work for the family history. Yeah, he's ours. We're claiming him. He's part of our family. So I mean, there's that. I love doing the family history. You start making a connection to those people as you learn about their lives and what happened to them and who they were and where they were and what they did. It's a fascinating thing. I really highly recommend it for people to get out there and do their own family history. It's just so fascinating. And I've lost what you asked me. I'm sorry.
So how has that impacted your family now and your family story?
Well, I learned a truth through all of this. So when you asked me about when I first found out, how I reacted, what I was thinking about it. And I kind of was like, what is family? I mean, where do I really belong? Do I belong? Do I not belong anywhere? And what I've discovered, I mean, so I have a stepdaughter that, yeah, she might as well be my daughter. I mean, she acts like me, and she does a lot of the same stupid things that I do. And so she, she's not by blood my daughter, but you know what? She is my daughter, right? And I've just learned that family is who we love and who loves us. I think it's too easy to get caught up in, I don't know, the titles like a half brother, or
Right.
or a stepson, or whatever it might, or an adopted. We have two adopted boys, and we are so glad that they came into our family, and we don't think of them any less our children because they weren't born to us. So this experience with the discovering, the family in New Jersey and all the other stuff, yeah, we just hold on to those people that are in your circle of love, and that's your family. And and don't worry about the other bits of it. Those things are unimportant details.
Right.
And then I would also really encourage people. I have a sister-in-law out in New Jersey, and she took a DNA test, and she found out, and it didn't turn out well for her. I mean, so she found out her real father was, and he's a jerk, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with her. And there's a lot of people that happens.
Right.
But I would still recommend that people take a test. There's a chance you might find out that there's a surprise in your family. But I think that the possibility, the chance that you'll learn more about yourself outweighs the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable for a little bit, and you might have to meet some new people. I mean, because I found out so much about myself and why I'm the odd one and everything else. I mean, so I think other people will discover that same thing. And instead of focusing on this is a family that's uncomfortable, maybe because they're uncomfortable with their lives and themselves, they're uncomfortable with reaching out and embracing me now that they know I exist, right? There's a lot of reasons why families might not want to do that. And okay, that's not ideal, but that's not going to be the case all the time. There's lots of instances where, like mine, you discover you have a new family, and then you go out there and they're great people. And you just have more people to love. That's what my wife would always say. You just have more people to love now. And she's right. I mean, so I love them. I love to go out and visit with them. I really enjoy it. And why miss out on that possibility? Because it's such a great thing to be able to meet that new family in New Jersey and get to know them and hear their stories. And yeah, I do wish I'd been around for those stories, but I still enjoy spending my time with them. And so I'm glad that I took that chance and that I met them and accepted them in as part of my family.
That's awesome. You're sitting here and you're talking about this, and I have a friend of mine, Troy Dunn, who had a show, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I think, or something like that, called The Locator. Have you heard of this? It's a show. Yeah. So he would reunite families, and you see some of the episodes where, like, it turns out, happier than maybe what they anticipated. And then there's the tough episodes where it just doesn't turn out very good. Or even in your situation, like you were able to meet your family, but then you also have where your mom's not telling you anything about what happened. And so one of the things that I've kind of realized in through watching these different experiences is that the people who really try to not have expectations typically are the ones who are able to move forward in a healthy way. It's kind of like when we put those heavy expectations on our family and what our life is supposed to look like. And, like we get so caught up in like how everything should be, right? Yeah. Like they should want to talk to me, or they should want me in their life, or they should tell me what happened, that all of a sudden you're creating a place where you can be hurt and disappointed, you know? And instead, if you just kind of try to nix the expectations, right? And just say, I'm just going to do this so I can find out more about myself. And maybe I'll be able to find out a lot, and maybe I'll be able to find out a little. But in doing my family history, maybe going forward and taking those those tests, right? Getting the DNA tests and stuff, at least it opens up, like you said, the possibility of having something good happen. But even if
Right.
something wonderful doesn't come to fruition, that's okay, right? Because I think personally that when we all cross over and we're done with this life, I think we're still going to have an opportunity to be part of those memories. I really do. There was an apostle that said something about, and I'm sure you guys probably know this one. I can't think of who it is right off the top of my head, but he said, not to concern yourself with the way that everything's going to work out in the eternities, right? Like that
Right.
our family relationships will be more beautiful than we can, even imagine. And so I think about that and I just think, gosh, like, I like the idea that you're encouraging everyone. Just, you know what? Just go find out for yourself. Like, it doesn't mean you have to dictate how everything is going to go. And it's okay if things just don't feel awesome, because guess what? We have eternity to figure it out. We don't have to know everything right now. We have eternity to get all the answers and to figure it out later.
And I think you hit on a really good point. I'm going to go back to the question you asked about my mom. And everyone, that is the first question people ask me if they've read the book and they meet me. They're like, "What did your mom say?"
Mm-hmm.
All right, and she really hasn't said anything, and I don't want to share what she has said because I don't want to embarrass my mom. And I think what's important here, I was upset with my mom because she wouldn't tell me, because I just wanted to know some details, any kind of details, right? But then I came to the decision that when I started writing the book, that I was just going to leave her mostly out of the book. So the memoir. So if you pick up and read The Milkman's Son, there is very little about my mom there. In fact, the publisher's like, "We need more about your mom." I'm like, there's just not stuff there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of dug up and it's nothing significant. But I had to make the decision that my mom has been a good mom and she loves me. And it's not worth it to me to totally upset her by talking about it or pushing for it. She's just not ever going to tell me. So I just had to accept that she's not going to tell me. And if I don't know, then I guess it doesn't really matter. I mean, I know who my dad is. I know something happened. I know the important things. I've met that family in New Jersey.
Right.
How they met and any of that other stuff. It'd be interesting, but it's not going to improve my life by knowing it. And it could horribly destroy my relationship with my mom if I push for it. So I think sometimes we need to not be upset. We need to just let it go. And, the Savior teaches us that, just, to let a lot of that stuff go and to, embrace our family and love them and accept them for who they are. And that's what I've done. So, yes, I would love Mom to tell me a couple stories about him and her and how they met. And, that would be great. But I can live a fully functional life if I don't know any of that. So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's kind of what, Alicia, where you're alluding to there.
Right.
I think it's interesting that you adopted kids.
Yeah.
Because you brought them into your family. They have different biological parents than you.
Sort of. They're my nephews.
Oh, okay. So they are related. Okay, but still, I mean, adopting them. I mean, that's a big thing, right? Showing that anyone can be a family. I think that's kind of cool that you did that.
So there's a story that goes with that. So Lucy's my youngest daughter. She's our youngest child together. And we're like, okay, we're done. We don't have any, we're done. That's our last child. So one day we get a call and they're like, we're going to bring Nicholas and Patrick over. And, I'm sorry. We have a couple of boys we're going to bring over. I'm like, do we know them? They're like, yeah, they're your nephews, Nick and Pat. Yeah. Like, okay. Okay. And you're bringing them over. Why? They're going to live with you. Okay, we're all right with that. We're fine. That's okay. So the state had taken them away from my nephew and his wife, and then eventually we adopted them because that was going to be a healthier environment for the boys. So
Right.
it was kind of a funny story that they didn't give us any details. Just like, are you going to be home so we can drop these boys off? Yeah, sure.
Wow. That's awesome that you were able to just like step up. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't part of your plan. Maybe that's kind of just like your life thing is just things just aren't going to go according to plan. But when they all come crashing down, you're just going to step up. You're just going to be like, all right, let's see what we can make of this.
Yeah,
Right.
We're all family here, right?
Right?
That's right.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
It's fun.
So overall, Randy, how has this helped with your testimony? You know, what has it done for you spiritually to go through this crazy experience?
It's just expanded my mind on what family is, and learn to, be content with the loved ones around you, and maybe not bicker as much and everything, right? So it's more of a testimony builder and just accept and love, and be content with that, and don't be as worried about the titles and the what the appearances or any of the minutia that really in the long run doesn't matter. What matters is my relationship with each of them, and that they feel loved and that I feel loved, and we do. So that's the important thing. And that's I don't know, is that a testimony builder? That's what I've learned from it.
Wow, that's awesome.
And that the Lord's hand is in these things. So without His hand being there, none of this would have happened. And looking years after the fact, I'm so happy that all of these things have happened to put me in the position where my wife and I are today, where our family is today.
That's awesome. Yeah, we never really know what God has in store for us until we look back, right? And when you just see all these things come together, you're like, okay, like, I see what you did there.
I see what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Oh, Randy, this has been such an enjoyable show. Thank you so much for coming on today, for being our guest, and for sharing your incredible story of family. I really think that's what it is. It's, there is a secret and there is this whole thing, but ultimately it led you to family.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's so beautiful and just put a smile on my face. My cheeks hurt. That's always a sign that it's been a really good show, is when either my mascara is gone or my cheeks hurt. Like those are my
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me come in and talk with you.
Yeah,
you bet.
So if our listeners are interested in getting your book, The Milkman's Son, or any of your books, where's the best place for them to find them?
Milkman's Son, you can find it in Deseret Books. I think you can still find it. I know they featured it last year, so that's been a long time in the book industry. If your book is in the bookstores 6 months later, that's fantastic. So yeah. I believe you can still pick it up if you go to Deseret Books. If not, you can go to Amazon, and all my books are there. I've got my fiction books there. You can pick those up, and if you're interested as well. If you want a scary read about what's going to happen in the world and everything, yeah. Those are available too.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. Well, we'll be sure to go ahead and share some links with everybody down in the descriptions too. So if anyone's looking to, get in contact with you over those, we can add some links. So awesome.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and if anybody wants to leave a story and share a story like Randy did, go to latterdaylights.com. We'd love to have you on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you're a friend and like Dalen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. That would be awesome. All right. Well, listeners, we just want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today for another episode of Latter Day Lights. Randy, you were an awesome guest. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors and in your building of more family memories. For our guests, guys, leave us a comment. We would love to hear what part of the story, really touched you, and what kind of questions do you have for Randy? Do you have a similar experience that maybe you're struggling with, or that you've gained your own testimony in different ways by going through? We would love to hear that kind of feedback from you guys. So be sure to comment and to do your little 5-second missionary work. Push that share button and share Randy's story. Make sure that you get his light out to those that are around you in your life. So, and with that, I think we're done for today. Is that right? Yeah. Awesome.
Yep. Hope you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you next Sunday on another episode. Till then, have a good one. We'll see you then.
Bye.